Welcome to the GSMC Pets Podcast, the show that caters to pet lovers of all kinds. We'll talk about pets on social media, pets doing amazing things, and how to take care of the pets in your life. Whether your pet is a dog, a cat, a llama, hamster, reptile, or something more exotic, you'll find educational and entertaining information on the GSMC Pets Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the GSMC Pet Podcast, brought to you by the one, the only GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Taylor Cowan, and today, folks, we are going to be dealing with a rather touchy subject. Touchy for some. I am pretty neutral on it. Some people are strictly for it. Some people are strictly against it. I personally had it done. Not to myself, to my dog. It is the topic of neutering. Yes, neutering, spaying, castration, desexing, whatever you want to call it. Desexing is the hip new veterinary term they're using down at the office. The new medical lingo, if you will. I'm going to call it castration for the male. It is a very harsh word, but we're going to make castration fun today. Never thought you'd hear that, did you? Let's start with the benefits of castrating your dog. It is the removal of the testicles, as they say. Lots of health benefits. You are going to decrease the instances of hyperplasia, which is an enlarged prostate, or prostatitis, which is an inflamed prostate, and perineal hernias. So no prostate problems, no hernias, and believe me, taking your dog to the vet for that is going to cost you a lot more than a neutering would cost. Now, there's also a lot of behavioral things it's going to help with, decreasing mounting. If you've ever been to the dog park, you've seen the guy who's running around chasing his male dog around that is mounting everything with a pulse. And he's chasing his dog around being like, oh my goodness, oh geez, oh my, oh sorry, oh come on, oh boy, he's just a kid, he doesn't know any better, oh boy. Don't be that guy. It's embarrassing. It's weird. It is what it is. I mean, dogs are going to do what dogs are going to do. It's going to decrease roaming for males. Roaming is where your dog sniffs out that lady down the street, a couple blocks away even does. They can sense it. They can sense it from a long ways away, and they will find it. They will crawl under the fence. They'll find some hole in the fence that you never noticed, and they will exploit it. They will gladly exploit it. So it's going to decrease that, which also increases the safety of your dog. You don't want your dog roaming around the neighborhood, running across the street looking for female dogs. And you also don't want your neighbor showing up at your door with a basket full of puppies, asking you where's the child support checks. Now, it's going to eliminate testicular cancer. Back to the health. Sorry to skip around here. Eliminate testicular cancer. Can't get testicular cancer if you don't have testicles. And, amazing little fun fact here, there's a growing movement now of people who believe that removing a male's testicle, whether it be a dog, a bull, any type of animal, male animal, that removing their testicles will affect them negatively, psychologically, give them a complex, so to say. And so there's a lot of companies now that are providing artificial testicles. So you remove your dog's testicles, they're going to put in a brand spanking new pair. I don't know what they're made of, probably some medical rubber. If I had the choice, I would pick brass. Or gold or platinum or something if I was a Daddy Warbucks type. But yeah, they can do that now. So if that's something you're concerned about, don't be. It's going to decrease marking and mostly eliminate marking. I got my dog neutered just recently and I haven't seen him mark much since. And it used to be we'd go on a walk and every other tree we have to make a quick stop at so he can take a little whiz on it. And that's not fun. It just makes the walk take forever. You got to drag him around. They're pulling you, trying to mark at everything. Instances of pulling on the leash have decreased a lot since I neutered my dog. And also with the marking, if you go into someone's house, you take your dog with you and they have a dog, or have had someone else's dog over recently, your dog's going to go and take a whiz on their piano or their couch or their carpet. And then you have to deal with the embarrassment of that. And I get it. They just want to mark their territory. I want to own real estate too, but you take what you can get, Take what you can get. Doesn't belong to them. Don't let them take a whiz on it. Let's talk about females for a minute. Spaying, which is the removal of the ovaries and the uterus. And they can do this in multiple ways. They can come in, they can make a big incision if you don't have a ton of money, like I didn't. They'll make a big incision, they'll pull out the uterus and the ovaries, quick, easy, sew it up. You're done. They'll send your dog home with a cone of shame, which they call at the neutering place the Elizabethan collar, which is a nice way to doll it up. It's a cone of shame. And that's honestly the worst part about neutering to me was having my dog walk around with that on, scratching the walls and bumping into everything, knocking stuff over. It's a very awkward thing. But you don't even have to leave it on all the time. They recommended I keep it on for like 2 weeks. I think I ended up taking it off after a week. And even more than that, anytime I was supervising him, I would just take it off and he was fine. Now, with spaying, it's going to eliminate the bloody discharge that comes with a period. Yes, dogs get periods too. Can you believe that? It's going to totally eliminate that, which is nice. You don't want that mess around. It's going to eliminate uteral infections, which is also great. And most of all, your dog can't get pregnant. You don't want the neighbor's dog who's roaming because he's not neutered to sneak into your yard in the dead of night, have his way with your female dog, and run back off, hop over the fence, climb under, and you never see him again. And you're left with a litter of puppies that you have no idea what to do with. It's your problem now, because you really can't, you don't know whose dog did it. You can probably, if you know your neighbors well, you can probably make a guess. But that's the best you got, and you don't know. The dog can come from a mile away. Dogs can smell, like I said, they can smell like crazy. They know when there's a female in heat in their area, and they will seek it out. And one thing to know, a couple things to know, that I was worried about is it's not going to change your dog's personality. That was my biggest concern when I got my dog neutered, is I would get him back and he'd be a totally different dog and he'd be all mopey, and no, he's still the same energetic, little, sweet dog, much sweeter now, in fact, than he was before. And it's not going to cause sexual frustration. This is a concern for many people. Because for obvious reasons. I would probably be sexually frustrated if, I had been removed. And I should add a little disclaimer. It's not going to cause sexual frustration if your dog has not yet been sexually active. So if your dog has mated before, they've got a taste for it, then you might have some issues with sexual frustration. And I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, what a sexually frustrated dog is like. It'll probably still roam about, and maybe howl and yelp. I don't know what that means. But if you get it neutered or spayed before they're sexually active, you're not going to have any problems with that. And their personalities will be the same. They're going to still be the same amazing, great dog that you had before. Now, stick around. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we are going to talk about why you should spay or neuter your cats. Also very important. I will talk to you in just a few minutes.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Folks, we're back. We just went over the copious benefits of neutering and spaying your dogs. And now we are going to talk about the also copious benefits of neutering and spaying your cats. Let's start with neutering. Neutering your cats, you're going to get a lot of the same benefits that you would with a dog. They're not going to roam around. They're not going to go seek out females. They're much like dogs. They can smell a female from a mile away, and they will go and find it. And cats breed a lot. A great reason to neuter and spay your cats is simply that they are now, by the Western Governors Alliance, are considered an invasive species in the West because there's so many of them. They can't control the population, and they are cold-blooded killers. They will hunt birds. They will hunt reptiles. They will hunt everything. And they'll hunt even if they're not hungry. They hunt for sport. It's sick. These cats are sick. And they're good at it too. I've got a little bird refuge that we've created in our backyard, and I have to limit very much how much time I'm allowing my cat outside because she will destroy the population. I've got two cats. They're both girls. One is Lady Stardust, sweet little calico. She likes to stay inside. She's a homebody. And the other one is Stevens. Yes, I named her Stevens simply so I could say this is my cat, Stevens. Maybe we'll rename her Yusef in the future. We'll see how she feels about that. It's going to eliminate the roaming. Help eliminate the roaming. Cats are going to roam whether you like it or not. If you got an outdoor cat, they're going to walk around a bit. They're going to explore the neighbor's yard. They usually set up territorial boundaries that they won't cross. Unlike dogs will just run off and go forever. A cat sets an area, like a square mileage, and that's their hunting grounds. That's their little home, and they'll stick within it, which is pretty cool. I like that about cats. They're very independent. It's going to decrease marking. Now, unlike dogs, if your dog's marking, you're probably going to notice it because dogs tend to stick around you if you're there, and you'll probably see them mark because they'll mark first thing when you enter a place. The cat, however, It's going to sneak behind your couch. It's going to hide in your plant. It's going to hide. And if you are there, it will probably still hide, but somehow give you a side eye, like I'm doing this in spite of you. And cat markings stink. They smell like ammonia. And they're not going to stink at first. It's going to build up over time. And then all of a sudden, some guest is going to come over and be like, "Ooh, wow, dude, what happened here?" And you won't notice it because you've been living in it. And then you have to get your carpets cleaned. So get that taken care of as soon as you can, because males and female cats will mark. When I got my kittens, they were spayed already. They were pretty young. I don't know what the earliest you can neuter or spay a cat is, but mine couldn't have been older than 2 months when I got them. And they were spayed at the place that I got them, which was very nice. It was very convenient for me. It's going to eliminate howling and yelling by female cats. Spaying will. I don't know if you've ever heard a female cat in heat howl and yell, but it sort of sounds like one of those tornado alarms that the cities put out when there's a tornado coming. It's really annoying and almost frightening. It's like a witch coming to get you in the night. And that's when you usually hear it too, is in the middle of the night. Horrible, evil witch coming to chase you down. You don't want that. It's loud. It's obnoxious. Spaying will also, cats, same as dogs, it's going to eliminate uterus infections, prostate problems, so on. Cats don't get the bloody discharge like dogs do, so you won't have to worry about that, but, you know, it's still going to help them just live an easier life. You don't want a sexually frustrated animal walking around your house. And unless you plan to breed it, which unless you're a professional, you probably shouldn't, then it's for the best. Or you live in a barn or something and you want, oh, look who just showed up. My cat just hopped onto my lap. Hi, Stevens. This is Stevens, everyone. You can't see her or probably hear her. She's very quiet. But she's going to derail this whole podcast, so I'm going to set her over here. Hi, Stevens. Don't come back. Don't come back. I know you want to. It's just going to make your life easier. Neutering, there's no problems anymore. There's rarely ever any issues that arise with it. The people who do it, they know what they're doing. They're good at it. They do a whole bunch a day. When I dropped my dog off to get neutered, they had 12 other animals in the waiting room ready to go. They do 20 a day, probably. They are very quick. They're good. When I got my dog back later that day, he was a little wobbly, a little out of it, but in 2 or 3 days, he was back to his normal self. For the most part, he'd still kind of whimper. I'm sure it hurts a little bit, but they'll give you medication. They'll give you a sheet that tells you exactly what to do, how to take care of it, how to take care of the wound, and it's just going to lower the amount of instances so much. Male dogs and cats, they will be so aggressive with each other if they're not neutered. I tried, before I got my dog neutered, I tried to take it over to a friend's house, and who also has a unneutered male dog. And seriously, they sniffed each other for about a second and a half before all hell broke loose, and they were just going at it. We had to pull them apart, and it was kind of scary. It was scary. I've never seen my dog act like that ever. There was one incident that we'll talk about in the next segment that I had with my dog and a child that neutering hopefully would have prevented. We'll talk about that in a bit, though. For now, if you need to get your dog neutered, call your vet. There are societies all around, like Spay and Neuter Society is where I got my dog taken care of. It's in Salt Lake City. Not a giant culture of neutered dogs. But, yeah, there's clinics all around. They'll do it for super cheap. I got mine done for $130. And that was with all the fix-ins. That was with the special IV to prevent any extra damage. That was with the cone of shame, the Elizabethan collar, as they claim it to be, all in one big package. And I could have done it cheaper if I hadn't got the little extras. So get it done. There's so many dogs out there that end up in shelters and get euthanized because people don't do it. And they let their dogs have puppies, or their dogs have puppies with some stranger dog, and the puppies can't be taken care of. And same with cats. Like I said, Western Governors Alliance. That's pretty much all the states west of the Mississippi has declared cats an invasive species. Feral cats, to make that clear. You know, the Gestapo's not gonna come knock on your door looking for your little kitty. But feral cats are now considered an invasive species in the West because they kill everything. Frogs, snakes, birds. You don't want that. We don't need more of that. If you're not a professional breeder, if you don't have a reason to breed your animal, get it neutered. It's for the best. I don't mean to lecture you. I don't mean to be a Bob Barker. I don't want to tell you what to do. I just personally think it's a great idea. If you don't have a good reason to have babies, don't do it. It's a huge responsibility. We're going to take another quick break here. When we get back, I am going to tell you about the incident that may have been preventable by neutering. I'll see you in a minute.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Talked about neutering your cats and dogs, why you should do it. There's tons of benefits, obviously a cornucopia of benefits. And I'm about to talk about one huge benefit that could have been prevented by neutering. I'm not going to say it would have been prevented. There's a lot of other things I could have done to prevent this incident. We'll talk about that after I tell you the story. It was Thanksgiving Day, this last Thanksgiving. Beautiful Thanksgiving Day. The sun was out. There was snow on the ground. I live in Utah. Thick layer of good snow. And this was my first Thanksgiving I was spending with my girlfriend's family. Her parents were there. Her brother and his girlfriend was there. Her brother's girlfriend mom was also there. Her sisters were there. It was great. We were having a great time. And I and my dog Ozzy were the special guests. My girlfriend has a 8-year-old daughter. And the food was ready to go. It's about 2 p.m. Food's ready to go. We're setting it on the table. I'm in the other room with my girlfriend's sister, Ozzy, and my girlfriend's 8-year-old daughter, Charlie. And everyone had been drinking a little, besides my dog and the daughter, obviously. And we were having a great time. Things were going well. I was making a good impression on the family. And this is one of the first times I'd really spent a lot of time with the family. So I felt I had to make a really good impression. And my girlfriend's daughter, Charlie, was playing with my dog's food. I had my dog's food in a big Ziploc bag. I was going to feed him after we ate. That was a mistake. I should have fed him before we even showed up. And she was pulling the food out of the Ziploc bag and feeding him one by one. And I didn't think anything of it, which was my first mistake. Feeding him kibble by kibble and kind of taunting him with it. And next thing I know, she is crying on the ground. I hear Ozzy freak out. And she's got her hands on her face. I pull Ozzy away from her. And I say, "What's wrong?" And I pull her hand from her face. And there's a big cut right under her eye. Ozzy had nicked her. He was being defensive over his food. And he just kind of snapped. And he left a giant, thank the Lord it wasn't bleeding. But it was a deep cut. We had to go to the hospital. And I pull her hand from her face, big cut. She's crying. And then her mom runs in, sees the cut, and chaos ensued. And it was, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Home Alone, in that first scene where the whole family's in the house and they're all running around like crazy and it's all a mess and everyone's talking at once. It was kind of like that, except for a lot of cussing and a lot of, get the keys, who hasn't been drinking? Oh my God, we gotta get to the hospital. Oh no. I take my dog immediately, lock him in the bathroom. I am mortified. Dinner was seriously on the table. We were all about to sit down and eat a delicious Thanksgiving meal. Totally got derailed. Me, my girlfriend, Charlie, and my girlfriend's mother, and for whatever reason, my girlfriend's brother's girlfriend's mother all get in the car. She didn't need to be there. She didn't help at all. She's just really obnoxious. But that's neither here nor there. We all get in the car and we rush to the Instacare. Instacare's closed because it's Thanksgiving. So we head to Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake City, which is about a 30-minute drive away. So we get to the hospital. First thing that they do at a hospital when a child has been bit by the dog, they ask you what happened. Because they want to know if it was if it was just a vicious dog, or if something like what happened, where there was a lack of awareness and the child was, say, playing with the dog's food, which is, they give you a sheet at the hospital after an incident like this, and it tells you all the things you could have done to not be an idiot and not allow that to happen. And just for full disclosure, if something like this happens to you and your animal, it is not the child's fault. It is not the dog's fault. It is your fault. Yes, I said it here first. It was my fault. I wasn't being aware enough. I should have known better. I should have told her not to be feeding the dog kibble by kibble. I should have taken the food away. She should have never had the food in the first place. I should have trained Ozzy a little better. But point to deal with this. He was a young dog when it happened. It was pre-neuter, and he was just barely a year old. So still, adolescent, become a preteen, let's say that, listening to Justin Bieber and One Direction. Now, the hospital on Thanksgiving Day is the worst place to be. There's no one there. We were there for about 7 hours. We get back to the house, and everyone is pretty much gone or asleep. And we had the most delicious, there was all the rolls left we could eat. We had all the rolls we could eat, some mushy sweet potatoes that we had left in the crock pot because we had brought them. And that was about our Thanksgiving, sweet potatoes and rolls. And it was all my fault. It felt so bad. I felt like I had ruined Thanksgiving. I felt like my dog had ruined Thanksgiving. My girlfriend's mom witnessed a dog attack as a child and already has kind of a proclivity to be afraid of dogs. So this didn't help. This didn't help anything. I went and, after the incident, they had tied my dog up in the backyard, which was fair. He maybe deserved to be imprisoned in the backyard for a little while. I went and got him, immediately took him home. It was just a terrible situation and a totally preventable situation. Fortunately, over time, her daughter came around to love the dog again. But, at the hospital, the whole time, she's like, I hate Ozzy. I never want to see him again. And I was like, oh, great. This is going to be great for our relationship. In this scenario, what I recommend is, give your child time. If your child gets bit by your family dog and it's not like a severe, attack, if it's an accident, give your child time, but, nudge your child in the right direction. Let them know it was an accident. You just take all the time you need to heal, but you don't want your child to be afraid of dogs forever. You don't want to overreact and be like, oh, yes, you're right. Dogs are evil. I can't believe he would do that to you. Oh, this is horrifying and terrible. You want your child to come around. You don't want your child to be afraid of dogs forever. And she wasn't. I was worried she was, but it took about a month. But a month later, she finally was like, I miss Ozzy. I want to see him. And thank God for that. Now, we're about to get ready for another quick break here. Stick around because I am going to tell you after the break exactly what you can do and what I should have done to prevent an incident like this happening to you.
Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Folks, we are back. Welcome. We just talked about my horrifying Thanksgiving incident. Totally ruined Thanksgiving. Potentially my worst Thanksgiving ever. Spent in the hospital. The hospital's fine. They give you water. No coffee. At least on Thanksgiving, the coffee guy is at home with his family. They give you some free Play-Doh. You can watch Nick Jr. I'm going to tell you now how to prevent this incident. First things first. Awareness. never leave children and dogs unsupervised together. Maybe if it's your 10-year-old family dog, gray hair, who's, been roughed around his whole life and, he knows the family, maybe that's okay. But even then, with a new child, and especially with, someone else's child, if you know your child can hang out with your old dog and they'll be fine, that's a different story. But if you get a new dog, or your child hasn't really been around dogs before, or if your neighbor's kid is over or something, or a friend's kid, you don't know how they're going to behave. The kids taunt dogs. They tease dogs. Kids they're kind of like dogs. They're hyperactive. They're very in your face. And some dogs don't like that. And, some dogs, especially young dogs, get riled up. My dog, Ozzy, for example, especially before the neutering, if you played with him like a kid plays, he'd get riled up and he'd start jumping up, and he's as big as a child, and he's 1 year old. He's as big as an 8-year-old, at least when he's jumping around, and he can, knock him over. That can hurt a child. Or if, you get a noxious little kid over and he's tugging at your dog's ears and at his mouth and on his tail, your dog might snap at him, and all it takes is split second snap, and you're in my situation. You're at Primary Children's Hospital for 8 hours on Thanksgiving Day. You don't want that. Never leave your dogs and children unsupervised together. Ever, 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 ever. Now, you should know how your dog is feeling as well. It can be really hard to read your dog's body language. Lots of dogs are different. You really have to know your dog. If it doesn't seem like your dog is in a great mood, don't have him around the kid at all, even supervised. Because I was there when my dog snapped my girlfriend's daughter, and it happened in the blink of an eye. I'm telling you, read your dog's body language. And also know the kid. If you know the kid's chill and relaxed and knows dogs, then that's one thing. But if it's, like I said, if it's your neighbor's kid, if it's your friend's kid, who you might not know super well, or if you know the kid is hyperactive and likes to taunt, likes to pull, don't have them around the dog at all. Put the dog in a room if you need to. Put the dog in the backyard, keep the kids inside. There's lots of solutions to this problem. Another thing, educate. I should have made it very clear to my girlfriend's daughter to never play with my dog's food, especially while your dog is eating. It's dog 101. I was such a fool. Never play with your dog's food. And train your dog. There's lots of ways to train your dog to be more comfortable. Not food guarding is what they call it, where your dog gets really defensive when someone gets near his or her food. You don't want that to become a habit. And if your dog is already a well-established food guarder, you might need to get professional help. Look up on the internet. There's lots of sources on the internet of how to train your dog to not food guard. It's good to start that from the beginning, especially if you get a new dog. But you don't want, some dogs it's too late, and you really need to get a professional trainer. You don't want to do it yourself because your dog might bite you. And that's not a good way to start a relationship. Also educate your kids not to tease dogs. Simple as that. And after, when we were in the hospital, they gave us this big sheet. That was pretty much the first thing on the list is, don't let your kids near your dog's food, and don't, let your kids tease dogs. Cause they told me at the hospital that that's, the most common reason they see dog bites there. It's not because the dog was vicious running down the street, rabid, and assaulted your child. It's simple accidents that happen at home that cause a lot of pain. Also be aware of the scenario your dog's in. I didn't put this all together until after it had all happened, but, you know, Ozzy, my dog, on this Thanksgiving Day, he was in a new place around a whole bunch of new people he didn't know. It's a very active situation. It's Thanksgiving. People are walking around, drinking, laughing. It's loud. There's a bunch of food around him, your dog, that he couldn't eat. So that's very stressful to a dog, especially when we're all eating and he just has to sit on the floor like, I'm hungry too. And as I said earlier, I should have fed him before I showed up. Should have been stuffed so that he, you know, was less interested at least. There's a lot of things you can do. You can feed your dog away from, one thing I learned was you should eat before your dog. But then give your dog food right after. You want to set yourself up as the alpha, and the alpha eats first. And then there's a whole stage list of things you can do if your dog is already food guarding. A little, if it's bad, like I said, get a professional trainer to help you. There's a lot of things you can do, like standing around your dog's food bowl while he eats and like handing him treats a few feet away. Another thing you can do is try hand feeding right when you get your dog, especially if it's a puppy. Hand feed him early on for the first, say, 10, 30 meals. And while you're hand feeding him, pet him, tell him he's a good boy or girl. And that just gets your dog in a relaxed state while he or she's eating. You see, dogs, they're born in litters. And from a very young age, they have to fight to get their food. They have to fight to get to a nipple to slurp milk out of it. And it's a stressful situation. And they learn to be aggressive about it early on because the more aggressive dogs get more milk and they grow to be bigger and stronger. So it's kind of ingrained in them from a young age from competing with their litter mates. So if you know your or your dog is going to be in a stressful situation like mine was in, be ready, be prepared. Don't be nonchalant about it like I was. Because believe me, you do not want that incident to happen to you. And it's totally preventable. And eventually you want to get to a point where, you know, your kid can feed your dog. Because you don't want to do chores, right? You want to tell your kid to go take care of it. That's what kids are for. That's why we have children, to do the household chores. And there's just so much you can do. It blew me away. They gave me a whole training sheet basically at the hospital, like I should have known already, and it was pretty embarrassing, to be frank with you. Other than that, you know, if it remains a problem, feed your dog outside, away from everyone. You're the only person who feeds it, and that's that. Sometimes that's the only way. Sometimes it's so ingrained in your dog that it's too late. If that's the case, that's unfortunate. If you got a shelter dog and that's how he or she is, that's unfortunate, but that's just reality. And that's what we have to live with. Folks, we're going to take another quick break, hang out, because next segment we are talking about Cats. Yes, Cats, not that terrible movie that came out last year that lost a ton of money. No, the loving, caring cats in your home and in your neighborhood. I will see you in just a few seconds.
The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Travel Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Back, my friends, and it is time for the cats segment. Let me explain a little clearer. I'm going to tell you why, if you're trying to decide on a first pet right now, why I think cats are the ultimate pet to get for an indecisive person like me. Cats were my first pet that I got on my own, that I kept. I actually had a husky years and years ago. Things didn't work out with the husky. Let's just say that. I lived in Brooklyn, New York at the time, and as it turns out, a strange 1-year-old husky and small Brooklyn apartments don't mix. They just don't mix. Cats are the ultimate in-between pet, I'd say. The ultimate, you get the best of both worlds with cats, let's say that. They are super independent. They are very low maintenance. I think so. I think they're very low maintenance. Some people would disagree. You get a lizard and you can put it in a terrarium and it sits there and you can put it on your shoulder or whatever. But for the most of the time, it's going to be sitting there basking under a little lamp. I don't want to disparage anyone's lizard, but I don't get the same love. I don't sense the same love from a lizard as I do from my cats. And I've never had a lizard, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the idiot here. If you think I'm wrong, go to our Twitter page. Call me out. Feel free to just call me out. Because, I know very little about lizards or snakes. But I feel like cats, they also do that. They'll sit in the windowsill and they'll rest in the sun. But they'll also, like a dog, come and rest in your lap and roll over, and you can tickle their belly and they'll purr and they'll nuzzle your neck. I feel like you get the best of both worlds with a cat. And as I said, very low maintenance. Especially nowadays, you don't even have to sift out the litter box. If you got a little extra money, you can buy a litter box that will automatically sift the poo out for you. And all you have to do is replace the sand every now and then and empty the little bag that has all the excrement in it. It's pretty amazing. They're also low maintenance in the sense that if you want to leave town for 3 days, I've left my cats home alone for 3 days before. I will empty the litter box, put some fresh blocks of sand in there, and put a little extra food in their bowl. A lot of extra food, enough for 3 days. And you can leave for 3 days and come back and your house will be perfectly clean. A couple things might get knocked over. That's just the nature of cats, though. In the middle of the night, you'll hear a or a clunk, and you just kind of wake up and you say, "Oh, great, good. I'll deal with that in the morning." And it's usually, just they knocked the remote off the table or something. Don't leave things too close to the edge of the table if you have cats. Let's just say that. They're super loving if you raise them right. I was fortunate when I got my kittens. I had a lot of guests coming over to my house all the time. I had guests every day, lots of people. So they got a lot of love from a very young age. So they're not, some cats hide in the corner and they don't like people. My cats are just attracted to people. They'll come right up to you on the street, even strangers, and they'll hop up on your shoulder. They're super sweet. So if you get a cat, I recommend trying to socialize it as much as you can. They are, I won't say surprisingly trainable. They are trainable-ish. I've trained my cats to sit in a basket on my bike, and I can ride my bike and they'll hang out in the basket and let the wind blow through their hair. I've also trained one of my cats to walk on a leash. I tried to get them both to walk on a leash, but the first time I brought them out with the leashes, this big old dump truck drove by and scared the heck out of one of the cats so bad that she never wanted to be on the leash again. Every time I'd put her little harness on and put the leash on, I just ended up dragging her across the floor. Meow, meow. So I just let her stay at home, and that's fine. The other one, however, loves it. Absolutely loves it. I will, quick disclaimer though, say that cats may be the most boring animal to walk because they just love to mosey. It's not really a walk, it's more of a stand. You take 2 steps, and then you stand there for a minute and a half while your cat sniffs a flower and slowly meanders down the street. So you'll get about half a block before you decide, what am I doing? I don't need to walk my cat. My cat can walk itself. They're super independent. I don't know any other animal really where you can just let it outside and it can leave your yard and go to the neighbor's house and it will still come back. It always knows its way back. And it wants to come back. I love that about my cat. And it takes a level of trust. A lot of people recommend, the clinic I got my cats from, they recommend you don't let your cat outside. I broke that rule. Because my cat is spayed and neutered. I knew she wouldn't get pregnant. I knew she would be fine. And it was scary at first because I would let them out as kittens in like the middle of the night was the only time I was, felt good about doing it. And then slowly as time went on, I started letting them out in the day and they always came back. One of them never goes outside anymore. We moved to a new house and she just likes to stay in the house now. But one just will explore the whole neighborhood, climbs trees, gets on the roof somehow. I have no idea how she does it. It's really quite amazing. But I think, they're just the perfect in-between cat. All ages love them. I don't know if you can get hypoallergenic cats. I think you can. But what I've learned is if you keep your cat clean, brush it a lot, it affects your allergies a lot less. People aren't actually allergic to the cats themselves. They're allergic to dander. Is that right? Dander and things that the cat picks up in its fur from outside, pollens and, so on and so forth. So it's not the cat hair they're allergic to. So if you keep it clean, brush him or her a lot, they're going to be fine. People will be less allergic. There's a lot of hair that gets around the house, but like I said, that can be maintained with heavy brushing, lots of baths, good grooming, and cats groom themselves, which is an amazing, amazing, amazing thing. I don't know if you've ever had a dog before. You give it a bath, you got about a week. Before there's some mud pile or something the dog gets into where you're like, oh, goodness, you stink again. My cat's cleaning itself next to me right now with its own tongue. If only we could do that. Imagine how much water would be saved. Countless gallons. They're also easy. They're just easy to deal with. They are out of the way. They're not like dogs. You don't have to take it on a walk every day. You don't have to take it to the park. They're not loud. Dogs can be very loud. Cats aren't going to scream at the door when someone knocks on it. And what's the deal with that? Why do dogs always rush to the door when it rings? It's hardly ever for them. Folks, we're going to take one final quick break. We'll come back. We'll recap what we talked about. And I'm going to give you my subjective top 5 pet movie list of all time. It took me a lot of time to come up with this. When I looked up the list, or a list of just pet movies in general, I forgot how many great pet movies there were, and I had to pick out my 5 favorites from it. But I believe this is a comprehensive list of the top pet movies of all time. I will see you in just a few seconds. Stick around.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Back, folks. This is it. We are about to wrap things up. We talked about a lot today. We talked about neutering, what it's going to do to help your animal, all the health benefits, the behavior benefits, so on and so forth. We talked about my incident that could have been prevented by neutering, maybe, who knows, and proper training, proper education. We talked about cats, the most loving, nimbile, exotic creature on the earth. The Egyptians loved cats. That's how you know they're good. And I just want to say, for those of you listening right now who are, let's say you're an equestrian, and you're wondering, why didn't you talk about horses? Folks, we're going to get to horses. We got tons of episodes coming in the future. We're going to talk about horses for all you reptile guys. We're going to talk about reptiles, snakes, lizards, bugs. That's a pet I never understood, but we're going to talk about them too. We're going to get into it all. Exotic pets like chimpanzees and tigers and lions, which frankly you should probably never have, because I always hear stories about people getting eaten by their lions or their eyes ripped out by their chimpanzees. That's neither here nor there, though. Folks, we are going to talk about my top 5 pet movies. I tried to get a little bit of each genre here. I wanted to make it a comprehensive list. So I've got a horror movie on there. I got a comedy, kids, buddy cop movie. So let's dive right in with number 5. Pet Sematary. Yes, Pet Sematary. It's based off a Stephen King novel. They just made a remake. The remake I haven't seen yet. I like the old 70s one, I believe. I think it's 70s or 80s. It's before I was born. But it used to scare the pants off of me when I was a kid. Basically, the plot is a veterinarian moves to a new town with his sweet little family. And they've got a cat. What's the cat's name? I can't remember the cat's name. But they live on this busy street, and the cat ends up getting hit by a truck. And then there's this mysterious old neighbor across the street who says, well, you know, there's an old pet cemetery up the mountain. They say there's magic. There's an old Indian burial ground behind the pet cemetery. And he takes the cat with the father, because they don't want the kids to find out the cat died. So they take it up to the old Indian burial ground, which there's always, you know, some sort of horrific magic at Indian burial grounds in movies. And they bury it there. And it brings the cat back to life. But the cat isn't the same as before. And I won't spoil the rest of the movie for you, but highly recommend it. Not a kid's movie. It is definitely not a kid's movie. I watched it when I was a kid, and it's a lot scarier to watch things like that when you're a kid. I look back now, and it's not quite as scary as it was, but Great movie. Great movie. And I love the old man across the street. Sometimes dead is better. He's a great character. Number 4, Best in Show. This is a parody movie about a dog show, and I believe there's 5 or 6 people that they focuses on. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen This Is Spinal Tap, classic parody. It's a lot of the same actors that are in that movie, same style. It's like a mockumentary, as they call it. And they just follow these people around as they're on their way to this big, I think it's the Eukanuba dog show. And it's super funny, super funny. Also, probably not a kid's movie. I think it's PG-13. But one of my favorites, another movie I've liked from a very young age that has unlimited watchability to me. Kind of. I've actually seen it so many times now that I know exactly what happens. So every single joke in the movie, I could probably spout off. Best in Show. That's number 4. Number 3, Babe, Ba-Ra-Moo. If you remember that movie. It's about the little pig who lives on the farm who wants to be a sheep herding dog. And I have a sheep herding dog. So it's close to my heart. And my sheep herding dog, I found a pig at one point. My sheep herding dog attacked it. So I don't know if they're actually friends. But that's kind of the point of the movie. The dogs don't think he can be a sheep herding dog. And he can. He can herd the sheep. And what ends up happening, well, I guess I can't spoil it for you, even though most everyone's seen this movie. But it's great. Talking animals. This one is great for kids. I watched this when I was a kid. I don't know how many times. Had the VHS in the shell. If you remember those. Great movie. Babe. Number 3. Number 2, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. This is one of Jim Carrey's first movies. One of the movies that made him a star. And it's hilarious. Jim Carrey's hilarious. He actually did 3 movies that same year. He did Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, and The Mask in the same year, which just like exploded him into stardom. But it's about him. The title is pretty self-explanatory. He's a pet detective. He deals exclusively in pet-related crimes. And it's about the Dolphins team mascot. Their dolphin goes missing, and he has to find it. And I'm pretty sure the Dolphins don't actually have a dolphin. I don't know if they did in the 90s. I don't know what the deal with that was, but great movie. And finally, number 1 pet movie, Taylor's Choice. If you disagree with me, feel free to give me your favorite pet movies on Twitter. I'd love to hear them. Maybe we'll make another list in the future of any fan favorites. Or listeners' favorites, I should say. My number 1 pet movie of all time, Turner and Hooch, baby. Turner and Hooch. Tom Hanks, big old dog. Tom Hanks is a police officer. It's a buddy cop movie, but instead of it being, Jackie Chan and Chris Rock, I forget who else is in that movie, to be honest with you. Instead of Bruce Willis and Danny Glover, we got Tom Hanks and a dog, and it's amazing. It's hilarious. It's great for kids and adults. Great for all ages. Basically what happens is Tom Hanks is trying to solve a crime, and there's been a murder, and he finds the owner's dog, the murdered guy's dog, and he says, oh, maybe this dog can help me solve this murder. And like classic dog movies of all time, he takes the dog home, and then the dog wreaks havoc all over his house. But then he falls in love with the dog and a beautiful woman. It brings his whole life together. And I won't tell you what happens. But it's an incredible movie. Hilarious. You never go wrong with Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is already the best. And then you throw a dog in the mix. Everyone loves dogs. At least I do. It's a big old mastiff, big old slobbery mastiff. Junkyard dog, as they would say. And they start solving crimes together. I think Tom Hanks almost gets fired at one point in the movie for bringing a dog around, but, that's besides the point. The movie's great. Turner and Hooch. Highly recommend it. If you want to give me your input on my list, or tell me what you disagree with, or tell me your favorite pet movies, head on over to our Twitter. Shout us out. Let me know. And also, while you're at it, subscribe to our Facebook, to our Instagram. We're on the big three. Folks, thank you again for listening to the GSMC Pet Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, one and only. I'd like to ask, please subscribe to the podcast. And again, go over to our Twitter account, our Facebook, our Instagram. Leave us a nice 5-star review if you would. That helps us out so much. It's unbelievable how much that helps us out. Once again, thank you for listening. My name is Taylor Cowan. Have a phenomenal night.
You've been listening to the GSMC Pets Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's podcast.